The FP1, FP2 is here, but before I dive right into it, let me quickly give you some lowdown of what has happened in the past week. Leaving Zandvoort, coming to Monza in Italy. Starting from McLaren winning the Zandvoort with over 22 seconds, 800 tenths. We have Red Bull dipping their head rightly into the mud of pit and saying, yeah, we have a long way to go. We are confused. We don't even know what we're doing anymore. I made a video earlier this year, that was in January, when Red Bull came up with this idea of going podless. And the car looks really tiny on air intake. I said tiny on air intakes because when the air intake into the car is more tighter, you are able to have much air going in through smaller holes, so it increases, it becomes like a gush when it gets inside, and coming out through something smaller again, so you can have more air management. But also I think what it will cost, if you don't have the right floor to drive that same car, at the end of the day you are going to be missing it. And that was the mistake Mercedes made, and I said that in that video, that was the mistake Mercedes made when they had this podless car in 2022 and 2023, first part of 2023. They had a decent shape. They knew what they were doing. Their engineers, Mike Elliott, he designed the car. He knew what he was doing, but the problem is getting the right floor, because these cars are more aerodynamical. Through the floor, they can generate the right vortex in which will give the right downforce for the car to go faster. But with these new cars that are ground effect cars, which means your floor, your front wings, and the rear wings especially needs to have the same synergy, the same working process. They have to work together to give you the right downforce. Likewise, the side pod also, and also the coke engine cover has to also give you the right shape to give you the downforce, including the side mirrors, the halo, everything. It has to be aerodynamical to give you the right downforce. So with Red Bull going that route, they got it at the beginning. Now they said, oh, by race 4 we will be going purely podless. And I made a video and I said, if Red Bull can get this thing, knock it off, Mercedes should know that they didn't just fail, they failed awfully. But if they didn't get it right, it will be a show of shame for them, and it's going to them right in a position in which next year might be a little bit difficult for them. Now, talking about difficult, they've made it more difficult for them by losing a lot of their key engineers, professionals, personnel. So now they're dipping their head inside the pit, looking at what have we done wrong. Guys, you know what you've done wrong. You are copying Mercedes. You've done it wrong. Copy Mercedes, you've done it wrong. And you know the funny thing, Ferrari followed whole suit. Ferrari started making their side pod streamliner and more thinner, and it's already looking like the Red Bull but in a different way. Now Ferrari started getting performance. The first major upgrade Ferrari brought, especially to the floor, knocked them off. Boom, they were off it. Ferrari got off. They made the mistake. That was their first mistake. They brought a flaw that didn't work with the car, and that was around the same time Red Bull brought a flaw that was not working with the car. But thanks to Max Verstappen, that has been driving that car for the past 2 years, and he already understood the concept. He was able to drive the hell out of the car. That car has lost performance since China. That's the Red Bull has lost performance since China. Except they are not telling you the truth. The car has lost performance. But for somebody like Chris Horner, especially with his issues this year, big teams like Red Bull will not own up to their mistakes. Same thing with Mercedes when they went down that route. They never owned up to their mistakes. In short, Mercedes refused personally to want to change the concept of the car. They were like, no, this is right, we will do it. A whole year, zero. They were struggling. They were not fighting. Nobody was fighting Red Bull in the first 2 years. Yeah, it was only to the end of last year, 2023, that we started seeing teams fighting Red Bull, as in giving them, not even fight. It was just like glimpse. Yeah, glimpse of fight. Seriously, glimpse of fight. So we're now coming into 2024. From the fourth race, we started seeing teams showing, like McLaren, Ferrari really showing their face, like, we want to fight you again. And McLaren really stood out in all these battles. They really showed potentials, and they showed that, yeah, we are in it to fight and to win. So certainly with the upgrades Ferrari have brought, floor upgrade, I pray it work for them. It's not just a prayer, it has to be reality. It has to transcend into reality. They need to bring right upgrades, and they've brought the floor, they've changed the side cover, they've gone back to it to open up a little bit. Like I said in the beginning, when the air rushes through that small hole to get into the chamber, now that chamber holds a lot of radiators, like 2-3 radiators on each other. It also cools the engine, and they need some of the heat to go to the tire, major right amount of it to flow out of the side pod, while some part of it will flow underneath and over the side pod. Certainly, if there's too much air running through that chamber and such air are not being dissipated immediately, ultimately will also slow the car down because you're using your engine power to push more rather than the aerodynamics of the car pushing the car. Now, Red Bull got stopped at the point thanks to Max Verstappen proving he's a champion, and he kept on making a force of it, trying to win with this car, and he did some perfect job. When he was winning, the fault was all down to McLaren's fault strategically. Now, when McLaren started getting themselves back, Mercedes that had the strategy already started pushing, it became more difficult for RB20. So with Ferrari upgrade, like I said, it should push them forward. We hope it should push them forward. They've gotten it right because they've taken time, like 6-7 races, to develop for them to bring it to their home race, because they need to show some decent power and decent movement, especially in their home race, to show that they really want to impress. And certainly Ferrari had always impressed in their home race, except for Imola. So hope they can impress, and hope it will be a good update for them with all the things they brought: the front wings, rear wing, coke engine cover, the floor. From what I see, it is a modified version of the one they brought in Spain earlier this year, and it looks better because from what we are seeing from the top of it, should generate the right vortexes to push the car down. Underneath we've not seen, but we hope something very simple that will also be able to suck the car to the floor better through the end, not a draggy car that will slow them down. So now McLaren brought new front wings, and it's a different configuration, but look, it looks like something Mercedes brought earlier, but a different version of it. We hope it's not going to take them back like some people brought upgrades and took them back. So I hope this one will also move them forward. They brought different upgrades, and Red Bull also brought some few bits, and they are looking at how to make this upgrade that they brought better. We want to see competition at the front of the grid. We want to see the Ferrari, the McLaren, the Mercedes, and the RB fighting it out, so it won't just be a lonely race for the McLaren as it tends to want to be now, because it has been a lonely year and lonely race all through 2022, 2023 for Max Verstappen, because at the point he'll just be lonely in front, and I wonder how he's doing it, because this guy will just be all in front playing and the whole pack will be behind him fighting nothing, so we hope it will be much more tougher racing this time. And to the Renault Alpine are trying to fight a battle that I think way more useless. Sorry I used that word. Why did I say way more useless? And I'm not sorry for you. Renault coming back into F1, not just as car manufacturer and also an engine manufacturer. They were selling engines to McLaren and they were selling to Red Bull. Now, Red Bull pulled out because they got tired of engines going out on them. It was tough for them. Yeah, McLaren pulled out first because the engine was not giving them what. So when they pulled out, they went back to Mercedes because McLaren was with Mercedes before. So they got back to Mercedes, they renewed their contract, their marriage, tire work. When it was time for Red Bull to pull out, it was a difficult decision for Chris Horner, because at the point, himself and Cyril Abiteboul were fighting, as in they don't want to see themselves. They were like strange enemies, in which when their press conferences, they cussed themselves, pitted out, get angry at themselves, because how can you be using 2-3 engines in 4 races? Sometimes in a race you are using 2 engines because the engines will just kaput on your drivers, or the engines will just give in strange feelings. So certainly Red Bull were not happy, and Chris Horner, as a person he is, was never happy. He was just like, what is happening? You guys have to give us this, that. So they went back to Honda. They hadn't used it Honda, but they were able to improve because Honda just coming back. Now Renault was not selling engine to nobody except them. And if you look at the trend for the past 10 years, Renault has not been performing. Now change to Alpine came with the Renault engine and still the same. Yes, it's a good thing they should keep the works factory working and people are there working and producing engines. But Formula 1 is a championship game. It's a championship sport. It's a championship thing. If you don't have it, you don't have it. If you cannot win, it's not worth it. It's not worth wasting your energy or your money running races you cannot win. So I think it's better for them to just close. And like I said, one of the videos I made or shots I made, that they should partner up with Mercedes or some other teams, put their engineers, gain experience. Maybe in 5-10 years time they can come back with a better engine. But for now, it's not their thing. It's not their thing. Whatever they are producing or churning out of that place is not what. It's not giving that team a boost that they need. They're just behind. That's the engine that is still behind. As you all know, Mercedes has been a reliable engine since came back from Formula 1. So thinking of going back to Mercedes is a good, but this guy is protesting, which is what I'm talking about. They have Renault factory workers coming to protest in Monza. Doesn't change a thing. Your protests don't make the engine work. Your protests don't make the car fast. So no matter how you protest, you should be protesting against yourself in the factory, that how do we make this engine fast, this engine better, more reliable, not protest against your team trying to have a very better engine than the one you guys are having. They should better look into that and look at what they need to do to make the engine faster, and their team not to move to Mercedes rather than the protest. For me, is a no, it's not going to work, just a nonsense protest. Yesterday, the safety car was being tested in the wet on the track, and Aston Martin safety car drifted into the wall and smashed itself. And I was like, on this new tarmac safety car with good tires, lead up, I think that's a bad marketing for Aston Martin. Aston Martin needs to look into that. If Mercedes come out with their car, it grips that track very well. Lawrence Stroll will be hungry, but that's a bad marketing for them. Serious. And to Kimi Antonelli, coming into F1, then he will be announced, and he drove in F1 today. Maybe we'll wait a little. Celebrated his birthday last week. Let's see if he will be announced, but they really need a driver to partner up with George Russell, and they need it. Now, drivers complain about the track, especially the curb and the chicane, which is being changed. I think the drivers have the right to complain, but why should Max Verstappen be complaining? That will favor their car more. Remember, the curbs is not the best trend for the Red Bull. They suffer on the curbs, especially turning. Now no curbs, flat curbs. Max Verstappen, you are complaining. You know what they're doing. You're not complaining because it won't favor you, because there are points there in which they can take advantage and make use of those curbs, those flat curbs. Gain time. That's what Max Verstappen is going to do. That's what their car loves. So they are going to do it. Certainly, Max Verstappen is going to do it. So they should not be complaining. The only problem I think I have, the resurface track will be too slippery, will be too clean for the tires for these new cars, and I think Mercedes will suffer. And we saw that in FP1 to be holding a lot of it, and their car don't like it. Tires don't like it. So the practice, 12 minutes into the practice, Kimi Antonelli ran the car into the wall. The Mercedes of George Russell into the wall. He topped the time sheets for some time, but ran it into the wall. George Russell was not looking happy. Meanwhile, Toto Wolff was not looking happy. But I think this is something that will not fragment their relationship, and this is something they can work out. This boy is just 18 years. So skip F3, coming into F2. F2 is one of the worst cars on the grids in F2, and coming into F1. There's a lot of pressure on. I think they need to find the right balance to work with the boy. But a lot of complaints. Start seeing the issues with the Mercedes. The wind also, especially on the parabolica. The parabolica was just today a sliding fest. Everybody was sliding. So the Mercedes needs to find the balance because of the wind and all, because of the tire, because they are really moving out. The car is drifting out, seriously drifting out. Lewis Hamilton at the end of the whole session complained about the seat overheating. It from the floor, coming into the car, eat it up the car. So Mercedes, they need to find a setup, a right balance, because they are going to suffer. Certainly, like I said, Mercedes are going to suffer more on this track. So they don't know how they are going to come about. Now in FP1, we can see a lot of cars coming out with different flovies, different ways to learn the aerodynamics, especially for those that brought new parts. Ferrari Flovis, McLaren Flovis, Aston Martin. Everybody's trying to learn something about the car. And FP1 is majorly about learning. So FP2 is coming. I'll be able to give you a full lowdown. But FP1, we have Max Verstappen topping the FP1. After a long time, he has done that. And we have the McLaren. We have the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc second, McLaren of Lando Norris in third. And also we have a lot of Mercedes engine proving themselves to be very reliable. And shockingly, we have Valtteri Bottas in that Sauber fifth. Well, it is FP1. One of the things I noticed is the McLaren looks blistering fast on their lump. But one other thing is the Mercedes are locking up on their front runs, and that's due to losing grip on the tire. When you lose grip on the tire, the car locks up. So they keep losing grip, which means they are suffering more on their tire. So Mercedes needs to find the right balance. Save, they might come 10th or 11th in this race if they are not careful. And the Ferrari looks sharp, they look fast, they look blendy. Also, the Red Bull, they're still learning few things. But let's see what these guys come up with in FP2, so I can tell you what much you can expect for tomorrow. Seriously, the FP2 came upon us, and it was another understanding of how tight the battle will be for pole position and for the race. Now, looking at the pole position, the qualifying simulations still look in favor of the McLaren. The top speed of the Red Bull is nothing to write home about, serious. And if you say the top speed is nothing to write home about, the Red Bull looks like they are the slowest after Alpine, and Alpine still has about 4 kilometers thereabouts better than Red Bull on the straight. In sector 1 especially, the Red Bulls are so slow. So in race conditions, it will be difficult for them to simulate a sector 1. Immediately after turn 2 to accelerate, push it down, it will be difficult for Red Bull to simulate that. And I think these are the challenges Red Bull will be really facing in this race in Monza. They call it Temple of Speed. Why do you think they call it Temple of Speed? Because of those fast corners and fast straight lines. And remember, on the start-stop straight, they have increased the DRS. It has been extended. So that makes it more fun for the drivers and for the race on Sunday. Now, if we look at the simulation and the tires, I would say on the tires, McLaren had a very clean scoop even after a long run. But the Red Bull looks better. The Mercedes tire looks worse, but the Ferrari look way worse. With the Ferrari
looking way worse on their tire, they still have a lot of grip and handling on those tires, unlike the Mercedes. Even with the little better shape that the Mercedes were able to bring into the car, it has more balance in FP2 and the tire wear, and the drivers still complain of the heat. Now, why are they having more heat? I told you that track holds heat because it's a newly resurfaced tarmac, and that tarmac holds a lot of heat. Now, when you're now running with the planks underneath, and it's so close, those planks are so close to the way the Mercedes position the anchor of their seat, it brings more heat, it dissipates heat into the cockpit, which makes the seat to become hot. Now, Lewis Hamilton complained about the seat getting hot in FP1 and FP2. George Russell complained about the same thing in FP2. Hope these drivers will not be pouring water on their seat on Sunday. Because it looks funny. Or Mercedes will have to make their drivers trim weight so they can attach blocks on their butt. But seriously, sounds funny, but it's crazy because it's coming from only Mercedes side of the garage. And it looks like, what are they doing wrong? No. So looking at the long pace, and look at the long run, they were almost in the same shape, but Perez looks faster at the point. The McLarens look fast. But towards the end of the session, FP2 session, they were doing some 1 minute 25, 1 minute 25, 1 minute 25. But towards the end of the session, Lewis Hamilton was going into mid to lower 1 minute 24. And he was the fastest man on the track on the long run with those old medium tires. I think we need to look at that, but we can't really say up until FP3 tomorrow we'll be able to know what their real time are looking like. Magnussen had a shunt and he went straight into the wall and stopped the session with a red flag. But seriously, if we look at what is happening, the fight is between Ferrari, McLaren and Mercedes for pole position and for the race, because where Red Bull are today is not looking nice, except something happened, something magical, drastic happened over the night. But Red Bull are not looking great in qualifying, so for the pole position tomorrow, they are not looking great pace. But for the race, they look like they have a balanced car for the race, especially those curves that works in favor of Red Bull. You know, if they can use that to their advantage, it makes more sense. But certainly, let's see what happens in the FP3 and the qualifying tomorrow. I will be able to tell you where the race and the qualifying hands to. But up until FP3 tomorrow, I love you guys. Cheers.